Jai Shri Krishna. Dear devotees, today we begin the inner journey of the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion. This chapter is not just a collection of verses, it is a living expression of the loving dialogue between our soul and the Supreme. And this chapter begins with a very important question from Arjuna, a question that arises in the heart of every seeker. Arjuna asks, Lord, those who worship your personal form, and those who meditate on the unmanifest, formless Brahman. Among them, who is the superior yogi, the superior devotee? This is not merely a philosophical question, but much more than that. It makes us reflect, with what feeling do we want to connect with the Lord? In what form do we see God? In verse 2, Lord Krishna gives a very clear answer. Those who fix their mind on my personal form and always remain steadfastly engaged in my devotion with full faith, I consider them the best devotees. Here the Lord speaks of the simple path, where devotion becomes easy by connecting with a form through love. Just as we connect with the picture of a dear one, in the same way the mind naturally becomes attracted to the sweet form of the Lord. This is the special feature of personal devotion. It gives direction to the feelings of the heart. It gives the love of the mind a definite goal. But the Lord also says, those who worship the formless, who strive to merge in Brahman, the impersonal form of the Lord, they too attain me. So both paths are possible. But in verse 5, the Lord makes it clear that the path of the formless is difficult. Why is it difficult? Because we are embodied beings, we connect through form, sound, fragrance, emotions, and dialogue. In the meditation of the formless, it is very hard to steady the mind because we do not get the support of name and form that suit our natural tendencies. Like flying a kite without a string, possible for a moment but not continuously. That is why in verses 6 and 7, the Lord supports the path where the devotee, with exclusive love, considers him the supreme goal and offers all actions to him. And then the Lord says, such devotees I myself carry across the ocean of birth and death. This is no ordinary assurance. This is the promise that makes a devotee's life fearless. Just think, when God says, I myself will take care, then what fear remains? This is the path of devotion, where effort is ours, but speed and safety depend on the Lord's grace. Therefore, these verses do not just give knowledge, they give shelter to the soul. In them lies a divine promise. Fix yourself in me with love, and I will carry you across the ocean of birth and death. Now, after giving such a great assurance to the devotee, the Lord in the next 4 verses tells of 4 means or paths for the devotee. According to the seeker's inclination, faith, and capacity, one finds some means easier and others more suitable. In verse 8, the Lord gives the first means. Fix your mind on me. Place your intellect in me. Then you will undoubtedly live in me. This is the highest stage of practice, when both the mind and the intellect are absorbed in God. This is not just meditation, it is complete surrender. You may call it the path of surrender. The mind, which is the ocean of desires and resolves, and the intellect, which is the source of decision and wisdom, when both rest on the same divine pole, then practice becomes not just simple, but direct realization. But the Lord knows this may not be easy for everyone. So what should one do if unable to do this? In verse 9, the Lord gives the second means. If you are unable to fix your mind steadily on me, then practice, thus desire to attain me. How should one practice? Like a child learning to walk, falling, rising, trying again, and one day beginning to run. In the same way, the seeker should keep practicing to fix the mind on God. One day it will remain there. This practice is not about strict rules. It is the loving insistence of turning the mind again and again towards God. You may call it the path of repeated practice. And if practice too seems difficult, then in verse 10 the Lord gives the third means, work for me. By this also you will attain the same state of perfection. This is a very practical path, bringing devotion into every action of life. Perform every duty with the feeling of love and devotion that the Lord may be pleased by it. Like while cooking, going to office, putting children to sleep, every action becomes a service. You may call this the path of karma surrender, the surrender of your actions to the Lord. Life remains the same, duties remain the same, only the perspective changes. Now action is not motivated by desire for fruits, but by love for the Lord. Because now we are doing every action for the Lord. But if one cannot even do this? In verse 11, the Lord gives the fourth means. The Lord says, "If, being filled with devotion, you are unable to act for my service, then renounce the fruits of all your actions and become self-settled." When we only perform action, but do not worry about its result, then the mind becomes free. Free from the burden of expectations, free from the knot of worry. This is the beginning of renunciation, and here peace is born. Thus, the fruit of the means of renouncing the fruits of action is peace. After describing four main means, now in verse 12, the Lord compares these with other common means, and says this fourth means is superior to them. The Lord says, "Better than physical practices at the level of senses is scriptural knowledge. Better than scriptural knowledge is concentration of the mind. And better even than concentration is renunciation of the fruits of action, for it gives immediate peace." How beautiful is the Lord's love! He embraces seekers at every level. Whether one is an advanced devotee or a beginner, the Lord shows a path for all. His door is open to everyone. That is why this chapter is not just a philosophy, but an introduction to our ever-present Lord, who says, "Start from where you are. I am with you." From verse 13 begins a very sweet section. Here the Lord begins to describe the qualities of his devotee. Just as devotees delight in singing the Lord's glories, so too the Lord delights in describing the qualities of his devotees. The Lord says, "One who bears no hatred toward anyone, who is compassionate to all. In whose heart there is no anger, but forgiveness. In whose intellect there is no pride, but humility. Who is not shaken by joy or sorrow, who is free from attachment to anyone. Such a devotee of mine is dear to me." Next in verse 14 the Lord says, "One who is content, not a slave to uncontrolled desires, who is steady-minded, not disturbed by the restlessness of the mind, who is self-disciplined, who has mastered his thoughts, who has surrendered his mind and intellect to me, and who has firm faith in me, such a devotee of mine is dear to me." In verse 15 Lord Sri Krishna says, "One who does not disturb anyone, who never sighs even when troubled, who does not become inflated with joy, into whose heart no thorn of grief can enter, who cannot be frightened, who cannot be thrown into worry. Such a devotee of mine is dear to me." In verse 16 the Lord says, "One who expects nothing from the world, who keeps his mind pure, does not pollute his intellect, who is skilled, but does not engage in useless talk, who spends his time in my remembrance, not in waste. Such a devotee of mine is dear to me." In verse 17 the Lord says, "One who does not delight in worldly pleasures, who is never agitated by hatred, whom no sorrow can shake, whom no desire can delude, who is beyond both good and bad. Such a devoted devotee of mine is dear to me." In verses 18 and 19 the Lord says, "One to whom neither friends are especially dear, nor enemies are hated, on whom honor and dishonor leave no trace, who cares not for joy or sorrow, who mentions not heat or cold, on whom neither blame has effect, nor praise makes any impact, who is calm, equal, content in every situation, who is not bound to home, who is not swayed by circumstances. Such a devoted devotee of mine is dear to me." And now comes the final verse, verse 20, which fills the heart with emotion upon reading. "The devotee who with full faith follows this nectar of the path of devotion and worships me, seeing me as the supreme goal, that devotee is most dear to me." Here it is not about outer rules alone. It is the Lord's assurance for the practice filled with faith, surrender, and love. When every moment of life becomes dedicated to God, then that life not only becomes successful, but becomes dear to God Himself. So friends, Chapter 12 does not merely teach us the philosophy of devotion. It shows us what a devotee looks like in the eyes of the Lord. Neither complex sacrifices are needed, nor severe austerities. but a humble, selfless, compassionate heart is needed. That very heart becomes the temple of God. And that very life, in the truest sense, is called a devotee. Jai Shri Krishna.